So Sandra Kurtz, and I know I'm saying it wrong, and she told me nobody gets it right, so I'm going to just stick with that. In this talk, we'll explore the full spectrum of WaaS models, from traditional agency offerings to large-scale implementations for franchises and enterprises. You'll learn how standardization, automation, and streamlined processes can unlock new revenue streams, reduce operational complexity, and dramatically lower per-unit costs. Whether you're an agency owner looking to scale or digital strategist exploring new business models, this session will provide practical insights into building a WaaS that thrives, I cannot talk, drives efficiency and profitability. So everybody, big giant applause for Sandra.
Thanks. So hi everybody, and thank you so much, Raquel, for that nice introduction. I'm super happy to be here today and talk about website as a service. It's actually my very first time talking at the flagship WordCamp event, so I'm really honored to be here today. And before we dive into today's topic, let me give you a little introduction, little background on myself. So this is me. I think this picture was taken right before my very first talk at the WordCamp. I think it was 2.5 years ago at the WordCamp Germany. I got 2 small kids waiting for me at home, and I've been working with WordPress now for a little over 10 years. At the beginning in the marketing department of a renewable energy startup, and since 2019 as a COO and CMO of Great. In case anybody isn't familiar with us yet, we are a Germany-based software company offering a comprehensive blog-based suite for web agencies and enterprises with high-volume website projects, enabling smaller teams to tackle bigger projects and also to build large-scale systems of possibly hundreds of connected sites. And that kind of leads us to today's topic already. Website as a service, opportunities, challenges, and pricing impact for web agencies. So we're going to take a look today at different forms of website as a service and what opportunities they hold for you as an agency. We are going to discuss the key aspects of website as a service and the challenges of building such a business. And we will also talk about pricing, because website as a service comes with some very interesting pricing opportunities. And just to give you a heads up, this will not just be about its recurring revenue. So let us start by defining what website as a service actually means, because let's be honest, it's become one of those buzzwords that everybody uses for kind of anything. So very generally speaking, website as a service is some form of ongoing service around websites. So from a provider's perspective, we're indeed talking about recurring revenue, which is one of the reasons why website as a service seems so attractive to many agencies. Some of the agencies only charge that recurring fee, others also work with an additional setup fee. The services that included actually vary, but again, very generally speaking, it's usually about the creation and maintenance of websites. So as opposed to a regular agency project where you have someone, where you pay someone once, have them build your website, have a go live, and that's it, here we are talking about ongoing services. And these services may include, for example, hosting, tech support, possibly content updates, maintenance in terms of backups and updates, ongoing SEO and performance optimization, all these kinds of things. Now, if you're working in an agency, you might also be working with so-called retainers. And if that is the case, you might now wonder if there's any difference to website as a service, because for those of you who are not familiar with agency retainers, this also is some form of recurring fee that a client pays to an agency to receive ongoing services, just like the ones I just mentioned, like minor content updates, tech support, backups, updates, things like that. In my opinion, that's exactly the point where we need to distinguish regular agency business from actual WaaS. And that difference lies in the level of standardization, scalability, and automation. Because if the website creation itself is still just a regular agency project, then this part is super individual, and it's thereby very hard to scale that. For each project, you kind of need the same resources, you kind of start from scratch every time, And often the only way to take on more projects is to hire more people. When we're talking about actual website as a service, it's about a very high level of standardization, scaling, and automation. It's about being able to sell not dozens of websites, but maybe hundreds or even thousands of websites. It's about lowering the cost per unit through scaling effects massively. And infinitely, it's about growing your business without necessarily also growing in headcount. And that's what we're going to talk about in this session. So I already mentioned there are different forms of website as a service. And this is actually the very first important thing that I all want you to take away from this session. The one form of website as a service that probably most of you will have in mind is the one where an agency or a freelancer offers websites as a service to their clients. So for example, offering a bunch of templates that may or may not be customizable, and plus all these services that we just listed. That's one form of website as a service. And while this might be the one that might feel most natural for you to do as an agency, there are actually also other forms. And in my opinion, they might be even more interesting. So let me give you 2 examples. Franchises. With franchises, you usually have the franchise brand, like for example, McDonald's. And then you have the franchisees, so the individual restaurants, fitness studios, hair salons, or whatever franchise we are looking at. And often these franchises, they pay a recurring fee to the franchise in order for being allowed to use their branding, in order for them to get a product, or also to get a website. So those of you who have also been to WordCamp US last year for the first time, they had the showcase day there, which, by the way, is something that, in my opinion, we should consider having in all WordCamps. Those of you who have been there might have seen my colleague Jessica. She presented one of the franchise cases that we at Great have accompanied. It was about a German fitness brand, Mrs. Sporty. They have 250 locations in Europe. And each of those locations has received their own Mrs. Sporty website. So all the sites were branded in Mrs. Sporty's design. Mrs. Sporty was taking care of creating the sites, managing the sites. There were also some content elements that were synchronized. They were able to deploy changes and push new updates and contents to all the sites simultaneously. So a lot of things they were able to control globally, while still allowing for local changes, when it came to, for example, trainer information, opening hours, and these kind of things. The franchisees, they didn't have to worry about any of that. They just paid the regular fee to the franchise, and therefore they received the website. So in that case, it's not an agency offering the websites, but it's still some form of website as a service. We often see a similar thing in the corporate world. So for example, one of our enterprise clients, they have a partner program. And as part of this partner program, they charge their product partners, they call it, I think, a marketing fee. And for this marketing fee, they provide them with a landing page. Again, these landing pages are hosted, maintained, created by the enterprise. They all have the enterprise's branding. They kind of all have a similar structure, but with individual content. I think they also place ads running to these landing pages. So again, it's not the agency offering the websites, but it's also some form of website as a service. So why am I telling you this when the session is supposed to be about website as a service from an agency's perspective? Well, if you manage to get that enterprise or that franchise as your client and build those website systems for them, then this can be an extremely interesting way to grow your business and to land bigger deals. And with big, I really mean big. The last franchise case that we were involved with was about 1,000 connected websites. So tell me, how many agencies in here are usually able to take on projects that big? It's usually only the really big enterprise agencies like the Sites, HumanMates, 10ups, or now Fueled. But if you manage to create a scalable WaaS system for these kind of clients, then these projects will also come within your reach, even if you're just a small or mid-sized agency. So let me show you how. Very generally speaking, website as a service, no matter what type we're looking at, is always about centralization, streamlining of processes, automation, and standardization. If I say standardization, I don't mean that each of your clients more or less gets the same websites. There can, of course, be customizations, but if you really want to tackle those 1,000 sites, you need the scaling effects coming through standardization. So the first key aspect is working with reusable assets and a component-based approach. There are very different ways to do that, and luckily WordPress core also already comes with some great features out of the box with full-site editing. So for example, you could go ahead and create some blueprint templates, for example, for product pages, home pages, whatever, and that then either you or your client can use to efficiently create sites. And with section styles and themes and global styles and theme styles, it's super easy and only takes a couple of clicks for you to create a wide range of design variations from these templates. And the good thing about patterns and global styles is also that they adapt to each website. So you could go ahead and create a bunch of templates that super easily stack together websites. And even though the structure of those patterns is identical, they can still automatically look differently design-wise on each client's websites as they automatically adapt to the global styles. And this not only works for design, but also for content. With sync pattern overrides, for example, it's possible to synchronize your patterns, which makes it a lot easier to push changes to all the patterns, while still using them with different content at different places. To be honest, the sync pattern overrides feature is still quite limited, both in terms of UX and in terms of what blocks you can use it for. But the idea behind that is exactly what you need to build a website as a service. So think that approach a little bit further and imagine literally any element of such a pattern being fully dynamic. That's what we did, for example, with our dynamic templates, and I'm sure it won't take long for WordPress core to extend sync patterns override functionality in a similar way. What you can do with that is basically you create dynamic layout templates. And you can really make each and every element in these patterns or templates dynamic, no matter whether it's a text, an image, block, box, link, whatever. And you can even combine different levels of dynamic. So for example, if you have a headline, you can make it dynamic both in terms of its text and also in terms of its size. So you can use the same template or pattern over here with the headline being ABC and an H1, and over here with the headline being XYZ and being an H4. Same with buttons. You can make them dynamic both in terms of the button text and in terms of their trigger. So you can use the same template over here to link to another page, and over there to trigger a pop-up email window, download, or whatever. And you can even make elements optional. For example, all these blocks that you see up here, they will only be rendered in the front end when the content editor actually puts content in them. So basically, it's a complete separation of content, design, and layout, which enables you to use one and the same asset at different places with different content in different designs as they adapt to the global styles, and even in different layouts as some elements might be optional. And with this, you have already covered step one, creating a set of reusable dynamic assets to really speed up the web creation process of websites. The next thing you have to take care about is centralization. If you have a multitude of assets and websites, you need to make sure to have the possibility to manage them from a central place. This is, of course, a lot easier if you're talking about a large-scale website system for one client rather than a website as a service business where you, as an agency, deploy websites to a lot of clients. But it's still possible. So again, let's start with what WordPress core offers us out of the box. WordPress multi-site is probably the easiest way to centrally manage a multitude of websites. I could now do an entire session on multi-sites alone because we are really a big fan of that feature, but I won't dive too deep into that. If you have any questions about multi-site, if you're not sure if it's the right feature for you, I can just recommend talking to the guy with the green shirt and the straw hat, Robert Windisch. He's a true expert and fan of multi-site, and he will be able to tell you why it is such a hidden gem for large-scale systems. All we need to know for now is that multi-site, it has its limits, but it enables you to centralize certain aspects, for example, the management of plugins, themes, and users. So instead of updating all your hundreds of sites individually, you just do that once globally in the network administration. And multi-site also enables you and makes it really easy for you as a plugin provider to add more features or more settings that you can then control globally. So depending on your tech stack and your hosting, you will probably have a bunch of things that you can do centrally and thereby save time and resources. You will probably have like a visual interface with all your websites where you can manage them. You will probably be able to make central backups and things like that. And backups, by the way, is also something that you could also completely automate. And this is another key aspect of website as a service. Automate as much as possible and let the tools do the work for you. Because if you really want to tackle those hundreds or thousands of clients and sites, there's no way you're going to succeed with that if you still do basic tasks like backups and updates manually. I recently had a funny conversation with the CEO of WP Umbrella, Aurelio. They told me that they had a client who literally hired 2 full-time employees to do nothing else than back up and update their client sites. So those 2 employees were doing nothing else the entire day than clicking update, check the front end, go to the next site and do the same thing again. Super inefficient, since there are tools there that can do that fully automatically, and also probably the most boring job that you could have. So please, if you want to scale it, automate it. Back to centralizing website management. What if you have too many websites to put them all in a multi-site, or what if multi-site is not an option since you need to have your sites on separate installations? There are still several ways to do that. From a hosting perspective, you could opt, for example, for a multi-tenant approach, which basically gives you multi-site functionality, but without using multi-sites. And these hosting offers also often come with features like rollbacks, central updates, staging, and all these kind of things. Or you could also work with several multi-sites and connect them to each other, create a multi-site, so to say. I think there's even a plugin for that, for something like that, multi-network, which is also available in core since WordPress 3.0, I think. And there's also a lot of tools that do things like that. And that's, for example, also the way we work. We also take as many installations as we need, multi-sites, single sites, and we just connect them to each other. So we can centrally manage things, then we can easily migrate assets and websites between domains, but still have them on separate installations. No matter what your tech stack looks like in the end, and that really depends on the use case and also the kind of website as a service that you're building, what's important is that make your assets as dynamic and reusable as possible, automate recurring tasks, and centralize as much as possible. And also one thing that I'd like you to have in mind right from the start is the way you handle client feedback and client collaboration. If you're going to have hundreds of customers and sites, they're going to have questions, they are going to run into issues. So think about how to handle this feedback and issues efficiently for a multitude of sites and clients, either by implementing ticket systems or even better by tools like Adorim, where you can have handle the client feedback on the visual interface of the website directly. And also, please don't make the mistake of saving money at the wrong place. Building such large-scale website systems and businesses is complex, and you need the right tools for that. Your tools need to be mature enough for that, and they also need to integrate seamlessly with all the other tools that you're going to need to build such a business. And they need to be future-proof. So think about building that flooring website as a service business based on some lifetime license of some random page builder. What happens if this page builder goes out of business? Will yours too? I now want to invite you to take everything that we've covered so far and take it one more step further. Because we've covered working with reusable assets and centralizing a lot of things, and that certainly will speed up the creation process and make maintaining sites easier, so it will definitely increase efficiency, but there's still a lot of copying and pasting between your sites. And if you really want to tackle those 1,000 websites, you also need to think about how we are going to implement changes to all those templates, which are now on thousands of sites, possibly. So if you want to go really big, you need to think about not just connecting sites and doing things centrally, but also to synchronize assets between your sites. Let me show you how we usually approach large-scale website systems, either for agencies with a lot of websites and a lot of clients, or also for franchises and enterprise cases. We usually start with creating one master installation that will later act as a global template library. On that master installation, we then put all the dynamic assets we need. So if your website as a service is offering website templates, you will put all your dynamic blueprints on there. If it's about a franchise or enterprise WaaS, you would put all the dynamic templates, dynamic forms, post-type architectures, and all these kind of things there that you will later need to create the sites. We then take the individual installations that we need and set them up. Again, depending on your WaaS or on the use case, that can be multi-site, single sites, or a mix of both. And then we connect them to that global library so that we can then synchronize assets to those sites. Sometimes it also makes sense to work with different groups of websites and cluster them. So, for example, if you have a website as a service with different plans, and you want certain assets to be only available for clients of a certain plan, or if you have local differences or different brands of your franchise or something like that. No matter how it looks like in the end, the benefits of such a synchronized approach are always the same. Like I said, it's much more efficient to synchronize assets than copy and paste them all the time from here and there. It's super scalable, so you can grow your business, and whenever a new client signs up or whenever a new franchise location opens up, it's a matter of minutes to provide them with their web presence. It makes it possible to push changes or updates to all sites simultaneously. So think about your website as a service offer containing the delivery of a bunch of new templates every month. Or think about you need to implement changes on your templates and to push that to all those sites. And last but not least, it also enables you to offer your websites at a much more attractive price and a much lower per unit cost. That 1,000 website project we had as an example, if you approach that as a regular agency project, you need a lot of resources, and this project will become super expensive. And since there are hardly any scaling effects, and you kind of need the same resources for every website, the more websites you have to build, the more expensive that project will get, more or less in a linear way. If you create instead a synchronized and scalable website system instead of individual sites, then the initial setup might be a little bit more expensive. But from a certain point onwards, it might almost make no difference whether you're building 300, 400, or 1,000 sites. So in that case, for example, we were able to offer a website for as little as, I think, 120 or 150 euros. And don't get me wrong, the project size is still huge, so you will still earn a lot of money with these cases, but you will be able to offer a very attractive and very competitive price per website to your client. Let me sum up what we've discussed today. So, website as a service can be an extremely attractive business model for you as an agency. It comes with recurring and thus plannable income. And even more importantly, it might enable you to grow your business in a way that regular agency business might never be. There are different forms of website as a service. And like I mentioned, the one that might feel most natural to you might not even be the one that's most interesting to you. The franchise case and the enterprise case might be even more interesting to you and probably also easier to build. Because that's one thing that I actually haven't covered today. As an agency, you're used to selling projects. And in these two cases, you would still be doing that, just that these projects are much bigger now. If you opt for like the classic website as a service approach, you would probably also need to adapt your sales process. You would need to have a lot of tools to handle selling the services online and to clients all over the world. You need to handle taxes, invoicing, dunning process, and all these kind of things. And then if you have those clients, you need to have like customer support, customer success processes, cross-selling, upselling, whatever. So basically, you would need to turn your agency into a product company. And that is easier said than done. No matter which form it is, it's all about centralization, automation, and standardization. And the good news is that you don't need a huge team of tax specialists or expensive helpless systems. You can really build this right upon WordPress. And with the right tools, this becomes totally doable for you, even if you're just a small or mid-sized agency. So that's it from my side today. Thank you very much for being here. I don't think that we have too much time for questions left. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I will be around today. You will find me in the yellow shirt. Or if that doesn't work out, please reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Well, we do have time for like 1 or 2 questions if you want to queue up at the mic. I can't tell if people are leaving, if they're going to the mic. Okay, well, you'll also be available to speak with, right, one-on-one?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so that's it for today, but we do want to give Sandra the speaker gift. Thank you so much for that presentation. And that is a waterproof bag.
Perfect.
So,
and we're going to need it.
Excuse me, I have a question.
We do have a question.
There's a question. Where?
Yeah, over here. First of all, thank you, Sandra, for the talk. It was very interesting. You mentioned having a global library of dynamic assets, which makes sense in theory, and I was wondering what specific tools you use to make that possible?
I mean, we are obviously using our own software for that, Great Suite, which has these features as built-in features, but as far as I know, there are similar tools in some ways. So, for example, there are plugins that kind of enable you to synchronize assets between sites, but mostly like content assets. The difference, what we are doing, we are really making every element dynamic and completely separating content from design and layout. So you could, for example, synchronize entire post type structures with or without content, things like that. But I think there's also some hosting solutions that enable you this connection of sites, at least, and headless systems also, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.